Private parking charge notices can be a real pain, and this is one such example. So whilst it cannot be taken as legal advice because I'm not formally instructed, this can certainly be taken as guidance as to what I would do in this very situation if I were being harassed by these companies and I'd had the appeal turned down twice, which frankly I think is ridiculous. But you can make up your own mind. These are just my views, so let's watch the video, see what's going on, and then I'll give you my views.
Now, can anyone give me some advice on a parking ticket that was issued, in my opinion, illegally on so-called private land? This is a saga so far, and this has caused out about 7 or 8 driving instructors I know in Kettering, and they've just paid up. I'm not going to pay up. I'm fighting this one here. Basically, I appealed. The appeal's been turned down. It's gone to the IAS. It's been turned down. To me, it's because it's private land, which was not advertised. There's no offer and acceptance. Therefore, contract hasn't been formed. So therefore, I'm not recognising the fact of breaking any terms and conditions of their so-called terms and conditions that were hidden. Can't see you're entering private land, and the notices are up high on lampposts. The usual nonsense you get. So, appeal to them directly has been turned down. The appeal to the independent IAS has been turned down. What's my next stages? They're going to start issuing threats for money not earned. Do I take it to court? I'm happy doing that, by the way. Or do I ignore everything? Do I also write to them and withdraw their implied right of access to my land so they can't sell anyone to my house as well? Have you been in a situation that's completely ridiculous? So many driving instructors have been caught out, but they've just coughed up because anything for quiet life sort of thing. I'm not going to do that. Someone help me.
So that's the situation, and to me, it's quite clear, and I know exactly what I would do, but as I say, this is guidance as to what I would do, so you can take that as you will. For legal reasons, it can't be formal legal advice, but let's wind back to the beginning and see what's going on here. So this is where this driving instructor has pulled over, no doubt to give some further verbal tuition on the driving that just took place, and there's this sign which is helpfully circled in yellow up on the left there. Now, that by itself could, if it were clear that you were entering a private car park and it was clear that you're entering a contract and there were clear terms and all that sort of stuff, that might be sufficient. It might be sufficient where it is, but taken in isolation, I don't think it is. And the reasons I'll explain now. So when we wind forward a little bit, another point here, he says, at no point did I leave the car. Well, case law has decided that parking your car, in the judge's words, he said, I would have thought, is when you park your car somewhere and leave it there. I.e., you get out of the vehicle, you walk away. You've left your car in a place. That is parking. You've gone through the motions, and if we want to talk about, when you're using a mobile phone and things like that, what is it to be stationary, parked up and everything else? Well, the things that are associated with completing your journey, putting the handbrake on, turning the engine off and all that sort of stuff, and then get out of the vehicle. That's completing your journey, then you're parked. In this case, you're not parked, you're stopped at best, so it isn't parked. So even if this were a car park, which it isn't, it doesn't look like a car park to me, but even if it were, the car hasn't been parked. At the very least, he might have been examining this sign or getting out to have a look at the sign or whatever, if he did decide to park there, which he didn't. But let's move on. Winding forward to, this is the entrance to that bit, junction 9, A14. There are no signs on the outside here that I can see that are clear on the approach that would make this a designated private car park. All the while bearing in mind that these are privately issued notices for payment and not a fine, both of which can be challenged, just the processes are slightly different. But as I say, no clear sign that it's a car park to enter and accept any terms or purported terms here. Only when you get onto this estate here, there's a sign on the left. It's not visible from the road. It isn't clear. This looks like a road. Any judge is going to say this just looks like a road. It might well be a private road, but if they wanted to enforce charges on there, it would have to be absolutely clear. If there's one thing we learned from the Beavis and Parking Eye case in 2015 is that on the one hand, these parking companies can levy their £85 fees or whatever they are if they seem to be reasonable. Obviously, £3,000 or even £1,000 is not going to be reasonable, but £85, the Supreme Court said that's fine. But on the flip side, the signs have to be clear. Now, there was a then Queen's Counsel, now King's Counsel, who had a dispute again I believe with the same company from what I remember reading, and contrasted that Supreme Court case of Beavers and Parking Eye in 2015 and said the signs were not clear. They were on the other side of the car park. They were small, tiny writing, couldn't see it, would have had to go hunting for it, didn't want to go hunting for it, and therefore they weren't clear. I didn't accept the terms, and the court upheld that decision, in contrast with the Parking Eye case in 2015. This, in my view, is exactly the same. This looks like a road, it doesn't look like a car park, and these signs are not clear. We skip forward a bit. Even when you drive into it, the signs are high on the lamppost. They are small. Now, if you were parking there, and this was a permit-only type thing, and you were parking your vehicle there, then obviously you would have to get out. You would check the signs and all of that sort of stuff. If you walked off and left your vehicle there and it was a permit-only, that might be a different story. But he didn't leave his car there. He was just pulled over to have this conversation. And in any event, there's no clear notice along at the entrance to say that it's a car park, and that's it. So being a private company, what they would have to do in this situation is take it to court. Now, I'm a bit surprised. Well, surprised, not surprised. I mean, some of these do, some of these don't get upheld on appeals, both to the company and then to the independent adjudicator. I've been in the situation where the company just said, yes, fair enough, we'll just cancel the ticket with a firmly worded letter. But many of them, I know you guys tell me that many of them just refuse the appeal, and then the independent refuses the appeal. But if this were me, again, this can't be taken as legal advice, but if this were me, I would say, fine, take it to court then, because the worst case scenario is you'll have to pay the charge for it and some reasonable costs on top of that at the end of the day. But in my view, I don't think this is going to be upheld in court. So if it were me, I would be challenging it. Let me know in the comments what you think, because I, for one, think this is a little bit ridiculous. But the only way that they can do anything with this is go to court and get a judgment. Because many people get letters to say, we'll be able to remove your goods and get an attachment to earnings and all of these kind of things. They can only do any of those things if they first have a judgment and then go through the process of enforcement. But not only is that going to take a long time, but they obviously have to have that judgment first, and anyone who gets a judgment who has no ground of appeal would probably just pay it, and only then they're at risk to serious enforcement. So in my view, as I say, this doesn't look like a car park to me. It just looks like a road. If they were parking there and that sign said permits only and they parked there, that might be a different story. But from this video, it seems very clear to me, particularly with the reference that other driving instructors have been caught out and they just pay. That's a shame. And that, to me, that's an abuse of the system to try to, in a way, what feels like extortion. Legally speaking, is not extortion, but it feels like extortion. Just like some things feel like a fine. These would feel like a fine because it's got the same effect. You end up paying a chunk of money because you think or you're accused of doing something wrong. Hope that's helpful. Please do make sure you subscribe. And as always, thank you for watching.